Are you addicted to gambling? Did you even know that you could be addicted to gambling? Chances are you probably didn't. 93% of people who have a gambling problem either don't know or don't seek help for it. So today, I want to go over the 20 signs that groups like Gamblers Anonymous use to determine if you have a gambling addiction. And I'm going to be answering yes and no myself as to whether or not I have these signs. Because my name is Rob and I am addicted to gambling. I made my last bet November the 12th of 2022, and I've created this channel to help you avoid making the same mistakes with your life that I made with mine. Number 1, have you ever lost time from work or school due to gambling? Yes. I was always staying up late to place bets. I was always actually gambling at work and at school, whether I was in class spinning slots on my computer screen or I was working at a bar and I was going to the back fridge to check on my sports bets. I was consistently thinking about gambling, checking on the gambles that I was actually taking place in, and was never present in the moment. So I lost a lot when it comes to that. 2, has gambling ever made your home life unhappy? Yes. When I was gambling, I didn't care about what anyone else was going through. I didn't care if my girlfriend was having a bad day, if my family was struggling with something, because if I was down money on that day, that was really what took precedent. I only cared about myself, and that of course led to my home life being unhappy, as nobody really was happy to be around me. I was selfish, and I only cared about gambling. 3, did gambling affect your reputation? Yes. When I was at school, there was a day that I went into class and people were actually talking about me. And this was college, this wasn't high school, so gossip really wasn't the norm. But they had seen me the day before gambling on my computer screen, and I guess whatever sports bet I had that previous night had lost, and they were talking about, wow, Rob, the gambler, you lost so much money. I was now known as the gambler, despite the fact that I never talked to anyone about my gambling and I never shared how much money I lost. But people seeing me do it figured out that I had a problem even before I did. 4, have you ever felt remorse after gambling? Yes. I felt remorse most times after I gambled because I'd go in with the intention of only having one bet or only gambling a certain amount. And by the end of the night, I was borrowing money to gamble, freaking out because I was down money, leaving with a feeling of regret, this pit of despair in my stomach because I had done something that I knew was a mistake, but I also knew I was going to do it again. It was this endless cycle of guilt and remorse. 5, did you ever gamble to get money with which to pay off debts or otherwise solve financial difficulties? Yes, I was consistently gambling to try to dig myself out of gambling debt, which is ridiculous, right? You would think at a certain point I'd say, wow, I'm in this situation because I'm gambling. Maybe I should, I don't know, stop gambling. But that's not how the brain of a problem gambler works. We think there's only one way out because the debts are stacking up, the losses are accumulating, and we can't think logically about the situation. We can only think about our next chance to get even. 6, did gambling cause a decrease in your ambition or efficiency? Yes. When I was gambling, I did not care about anything else. I went to college and I barely made it through because the entire time I was thinking about how to pay off gambling debts, what my next bet would be, spinning slots, ignoring everyone, ignoring class, skipping time from work and school as we talked about before. I only cared about gambling. Everything else was secondary. 7, after losing, did you feel like you had to return as soon as possible to win back your losses? What do you think? I was only thinking about gambling, and so I was convinced that I would get it all back. I would solve all my problems with one big win. And that's what makes this addiction so insidious. It's the only addiction where you can convince yourself that one spin, one bet can solve everything. The problem is we're losing more than just money. And even if we did win our money back, it's only a matter of time until we end up in the same situation again. 8, after a win, did you have an urge to return and win more? Yes. Winning meant that I now had more ammunition, more fuel to keep gambling, because that's what money is for a problem gambler. It's the fuel that we can use to continue to get our fix, our high. And so a win, that felt great because that meant I could gamble more. I heard this saying that as problem gamblers, we're not gambling for money, we're gambling to gamble again. 9, did you often gamble until all your money was gone? Yes. I went into debt 6 times over 6 years to the point that I had to work a second job as a direct result of my gambling. I was always gambling till my money was gone because I viewed it as unrealized losses. I could keep going and I didn't have to admit defeat until it was all gone, because that same sickness of one spin can change it all is what kept me going. 10. Did you ever borrow to finance your gambling? Yes. I used credit cards, cash advances, and I borrowed money from friends and family. Never was I telling them why I was borrowing that money. I was convincing people that I needed money for one thing, turning around and putting it into gambling. And it wasn't a lie in my head because, hey, I'll pay them back and more. I'll give them a little extra, and then I can keep this money to gamble with. It wasn't stealing in my mind because I was always going to give it back. It was a distortion and a lie. 11. Have you ever sold anything to finance gambling? I certainly did. I'd probably have a lot more money now. Well, I'd certainly have a lot more money now had I not sold stocks and cryptocurrency to gamble, because I was holding on to stocks and crypto years ago. And had I just held it without gambling it, putting it into sports betting and slots, I'd have a lot more money now. But that kind of thinking never helps anyone. That's the amount of money that I had to lose to learn my lesson. The lesson being that gambling is not profitable. 12. Were you reluctant to use gambling money for normal expenditures? Yes. When I was gambling, my money was the ammunition, once again. It wasn't money to buy groceries or go out with friends or do any of that, because if I won a bet, then I could do that and have the same amount of money that I started with. It was this messed up greed that convinced me that spending money on gambling was okay because it was an investment, whereas spending money on the things I actually needed, that can wait. 13. Did gambling make you careless of the welfare of yourself or your family? Yes. Now, I never got to the point that I didn't care about my family, but there was certainly a tier of priorities in my mind where gambling usually outweighed people's problems. With that being said, gambling also outweighed taking care of myself and my personal health. During the time that I was gambling, I was extremely unhealthy and I was not doing anything of note to actually feel better, because I figured, hey, I'll feel great when I win, right? 14. Did you ever gamble longer than you had planned? Obviously. I used to gamble for 6 to 8 hours per day. I didn't wake up and say I'm gonna clock in for a shift of gambling. It just happened as one bet would turn into the next, and then I'd look up and somehow I'd gone from sunrise to sunset and gone into debt. That rhymed. I can't believe it. That's terrible. 15. Have you ever gambled to escape worry, trouble, boredom, loneliness, grief, or loss? Yes. I gambled to find a sense of purpose because in my life, I had always had a very clear goal. I grew up and I was decent at sports, I was decent at school, and I knew that my goal was to get into a good college and then get a good job. Well, when I got into the good college, I no longer cared about getting the good job because, hey, I was a gambler now, right? I'd figure it out and I'd do that. But I just kept going back for more and more, and eventually I'd lose it all. Then I'd gamble to escape the stress of losing it all, or the worry of how am I gonna cover debts? Oh, I'm gonna cover them by winning a bet. That's all I have to do. See where that one's going? 16. Have you ever committed or considered committing an illegal act to finance gambling? Now, I will not have this YouTube video play at a trial one day when I'm eventually brought in for something. But the truth is, I was always considering doing bad things in order to continue to gamble because it was a sickness. I was always thinking about where I could get money, who I had to deceive, and hopefully be able to pay them back, but what I had to do to get my fix. Because that's what an addiction is. 17. Did gambling cause you to have difficulty sleeping? Yes. There were 2 reasons that gambling made sleeping difficult. The first was that I was staying up until all hours of the night chasing my losses. So it becomes a little difficult to sleep when you only have 3 hours to do it. The second is that I was living in a constant state of anxiety. I was going to sleep right after placing a bet, and I was waking up to check on the result of it. So every morning I'd wake up, usually before my alarm because I was so nervous, because the result of that game would determine not only my mood, but maybe my ability to pay rent. And I would wake up to immediate stress. So yeah, it was not good sleep when I was gambling. 18. Do arguments, disappointments, and frustrations create within you the urge to gamble? Yes. It was always easier to turn and start spinning a slot than it was to confront that I might have been wrong or I might have done something that hurt someone else, because my ego was massive. Some would argue it still is, but I'm working on it. With that being said, I only cared about myself. And when I would have someone yelling at me or frustrated with me, I'd argue with them for a bit, but then I would run away when I started to think maybe they were right. And I'd go and I'd start gambling because that was easier than confronting reality. You can imagine what that did to friendships and relationships. 19. Did you ever have the urge to celebrate good fortune with a few hours of gambling? Certainly. I felt the urge to gamble all the time. So when I would have something good happen, it was a way to celebrate. When I'd have something bad happen, it was a way to deal with it. It was always present. I would absolutely be thinking about going for some gambling, no matter what was going on in my life. 20. Have you ever considered self-destruction or suicide as a result of your gambling? No. I never did quite get to that point, but had I continued down the path that I was on, it was almost an inevitability. 1 in 5 people who have a gambling disorder will consider ending their own life. And it's usually when it progresses to the point where the debts are mounting, life is fading away, and all you can think about is gambling to escape the sad reality you've created for yourself. I did it for a long time, and had I continued to go down that road, I can only imagine what I'd be feeling. If you're struggling right now, I want you to know that you're not alone. The main reason that I started recording these videos was because I felt alone for a very long time. But the reality is that millions of people are struggling with problem gambling right now, and millions of people need to know that they're not alone. That's what I hope to accomplish with this channel, and I hope that you smash that subscribe button and join me for this journey. I create content aimed at helping you to live a happier life and avoid making the same mistakes that I did. If you want to know more about me, check out this video of my gambling addiction story. And until we all figure everything out, let's keep moving forward and let's keep getting better together, one day at a time.